Board of Supervisors meeting of January 12, 2008 are as follows. A closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9B1, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, one case. County counsel was counseled. A closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators, county representatives, CAO and assistant CAO, Director of Human Resources and Risk Management, SEIU, regarding miscellaneous employees, human resources, with no action taken. A closed session conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. Properties APNs as follows: 44-011-050 and 44-011-051 and 44-011-049 and finally 44-011-052. Agency negotiator Brent Harrington, or alternate to be determined. Negotiating parties Ryan Voorhees, Greg Opinski. Under negotiation, instruction to negotiator regarding potential purchase price financing options, County Council Administration, with nothing to report. We'll now move to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They'll be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item before a consent agenda for later discussion. Are there any removals from the board?
Just a second. Let me look. I do not.
None. Staff? Any member of the public wish to take any of this off consent?
Move for approval. Second.
There's a motion and a second. Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moves 5-0. We'll now take a 3-minute recess.
Okay.
We'll call the meeting back into session.
Did you see it already?
I didn't see the flyer.
We're now open for public comment. 5 minutes per person, 15 minutes per topic. Is there a member of the public who would like to address the board?
Hi, Bill.
Oh, you were in the nick of time, Billy.
At least I was on time. Okay, I'm here with Dilip, and Mary Zawicki was not able to be here today, but I have copies of a press release that on Wednesday, February 13th, the Californians win awards for putting their stamp on improved nutrition. Assemblyman John Laird from Santa Cruz, actor Jeff Bridges, and 4 of the Californians today were honored with awards for their special accomplishments in strengthening the food stamp program in Calaveras. And if you read down, Mary Zawicki from Calaveras County won the award for the best performance by a county employee or official for her efforts to make the food stamp program more accessible in a rural county.
Wow.
She received 6 times more votes than anyone else in that category. And they were not all from Calaveras County, which we really feel speaks to the fact that people understand and recognize what's happening in small rural counties. We can make it happen. And this is her award. It is an Oscar. It's a stamping award. It's a stamping award, but it looks like an Oscar. It was very, very, very exciting, and it was held at the Press Theater. They do it on the stage, and they make it's just like the Academy Awards, but we're just really excited to have Mary as the awardee across the state.
I understand that the competition was some pretty heavy hitters, and that this is not just a casual thing. This is a major recognition. Maybe I should mention that we've known for a couple of years what a treasure we have and what wonderful things are going on over in that department. But it's about time the rest of the world found out, and I guess this is that moment. I am sure that part of this was just getting the services out of one town and into 7 places, but that has made a huge difference. This has done a lot more than just distribute food stamps. This was where that award came from. But if you're looking at any other eligibility program, if you're looking at services to people, if you're looking at the reach out to veterans and other groups that are served by CalWORKs, you have to see that she could be winning the same award in any of the categories that are covered under her jurisdiction. And so this is a great, proud moment, but is only the tip of the iceberg over there.
She was a little disappointed she couldn't be here this morning, and she was kind of reluctantly went with me. She kept, because we nominated her, we kind of went. I don't think she would have gone willingly, but she did credit her staff for making this happen. So thank you.
We're hoping that level of humble can continue as the awards accumulate. But it's a good moment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public on any topic not on the agenda? In that case, we'll move to item number 7, discussion possible action regarding county-initiated zoning amendments regarding agricultural preserves. I believe this brings our Ag Commissioner forward. Well, actually, it brings Bob Selman, our Planning Director, forward.
Mary's not here.
She is.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Robert Selman, Planning Director. The agenda items before, well, I should let you introduce them, shouldn't I?
Oh, there she is.
Yes, I'll be introducing the items. First one is Marilyn L. Pence and Richard L. Mattioli and Robert J. Mattioli. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing the names right. Maybe it's Mattioli. Mattioli. All right. Contract number 303 was approved by the Board of Supervisors on December 4th, 2007. Assessor's parcel 44-009-043, totaling 6 acres, is recommended for rezoning from rural residential to AP, agricultural preserve. Subject land is located at 2700 Willow Creek Road, approximately 1/2 mile south of the intersection with Mountain Ranch Road in the community of San Andreas. Subject land is located in sections 22, Township 4, North Range 12 East, MDM, within sectional district map 17.96.04.12. Would you like to consider both of these concurrently or separately?
If we could, Mr. Chairman.
Any objections from the board on that?
Please.
Okay. Second.
No, together.
We'll consider them concurrently, and the second of the two is Ronald R. Payne and Linda M. Payne, contract number 306, approved by the Board of Supervisors on December 4th, 2007. Assessor parcels 20-031-032, parcel 20-031-048, parcel 20-031-050, totaling 163.19 acres, is recommended for rezoning from unclassified to AP agricultural preserve. The subject lands are located on the south side of Swiss Ranch Road, approximately 4 miles east of the intersection with Railroad Flat Road in the community of Mountain Ranch. Subject land is located within sections 20 and 21, Township 54, North Range 14 East, MDM, within sectional district map 17.96.04.14. Take it away, Bob.
Mr. Chairman, you will remember these are our annual rezonings that we deal with after the county has approved contracts or non-renewals have gone into effect. And this year we only have zonings. We have no non-renewals that we have to rezone. And of those contracts that you approved, we actually only have 2 that require zoning at all, a 6-acre portion that is being added to another contract, as well as the balance, which is lands going in. You have already approved these contracts themselves. This merely accomplishes the zoning, which reflects the fact that they are, in fact, in an agricultural preserve contract. Staff, as always, is filing a categorical exemption for this rezoning, and subject to public input, staff is recommending that you do adopt the ordinance as set forth in your staff report to accomplish the zoning. So unless you have questions of me, I will step aside.
Are there any questions from the board, staff, or public? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Go ahead.
Excuse me, I apologize for that. Is there any public input on these two changes? All right, I will now entertain a motion.
I move both of the county-initiated zoning amendments.
Second.
Motion second, board discussion. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0, passes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We now have we're ahead of schedule for the first time on my watch, and we have 12 minutes of recess to look forward to.
Okay, Mary, take...
Board back into session. I'd like to just do an agenda check for a moment. We will commence with correspondence and reports and various members. The agenda shows the next agenda items being a series of closed sessions followed by a 9:30 public authority governing board meeting. What I am proposing to the board is that we do our correspondence followed by the IHSS public authority, then followed by the closed sessions, if that meets your approval.
Well, informed supportive services, is that under the 9:30 item?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
it is under
That's fine, then
9:30,
let's do
so it
that.
seems that we must. Okay, why don't we start today with Russ?
Okay, tomorrow, all of our board will be meeting off-site for interviews for the Public Works Director's position. In the evening, I hope to be able to go to the County Parks and Recreation meeting here in San Andreas. And then on Monday, I'll be attending the LAFCO meeting here in the board chambers. And I wanted to point out that I think I maybe forwarded this information to you about a February 26th meeting in Sonora concerning the California statewide watershed program. I intend to attend that, and I would encourage others to attend it as well. And that's all I have to report.
Marita?
I have a jail meeting this afternoon. I have, as I've mentioned to the board many times before, the driveway stakeholders meeting on Thursday. It has been agendized for this board for, I believe it'll be a study session on March 4. I also want to do a reminder really to staff on the legal access issue. We had a consent agenda item, item 3 today, where it said the applicants need to comply with legal access and roadway improvements. It's been a priority of this board, and I think it's kind of about time we put closure on that item. It's in the code. There were exceptions made or things that would be considered legal access, and I'd like to have that brought to the board as soon as possible in 2008, please. Thank you. That's fine.
That's it.
Bill?
As Russ indicated, all of us will be in some interviews tomorrow in Angels Camp for our Public Works Director. Also, I will be attending the driveway meeting with Marita at 9 a.m. in Arnold somewhere. Do you know where that is here?
The fire station.
At the fire station. And that takes care of this week. But last week, I attended the regularly scheduled meeting of the Mountain Valley Emergency Medical Services Agency, an agency that we are a member, 5 counties, the Amador, Alpine, Calaveras, Mariposa, and Stanislaus all belong to the Mountain Valley Emergency Medical Services Agency. And part of the presentation, or part of the meeting, was a presentation by the executive director, Mr. Steve Andreas, regarding a fiscal crisis that the agency is having, not just this agency, but all agencies. There are 7 regional agencies, which 66%, I believe, of the counties in California belong to. The reason for that is it's fiscally nearly impossible for a small county to afford to comply with the mandated emergency medical services activities mandated by the state of California. And at this point, if the 10% reduction in their funds is actually takes effect, there will be inadequate funding to comply with the EMS Act of 1981 that gives the orders to all of the counties what they're responsible to provide in emergency medical services. So what's going to happen is that some services are going to have to be cut back or not complied with if they do that. And the request is for this board, and all the other counties are making the same request, to ask the board to write a letter to the appropriate Senate committee to try to persuade them not to make this cut, and also to provide the state allows augmentation funding, which they haven't had since 1999. However, the services, the scope, and population of these services has grown over 100% since that time, and the funding has not grown one bit. Actually, the staffing has gone down. So I've asked Mr. Andrews to contact our CAO, Bob Lawton, and come up and simply make a presentation, because I don't believe the various discussions that we've had here over the past few years about emergency medical services tell me that there's a misunderstanding, or at least a lack of complete understanding, what we are required to do and what the Emergency Medical Services Agency does for us and what it costs and why. There's about a 20-minute presentation, a PowerPoint, that is quite informative. So I've asked him to contact Bob Lawton, and I assume he has done so. He has. Robert, to come up and give that PowerPoint so that we can fully understand where we're going, what we're required to do, and why there may be inadequate funding to do that, not just for this board, but for the audience and anybody that might be watching this on the videotape and the media as well, get an understanding here. Especially the Homeland Security funds, for instance. There's quite a bit of money that went out and continues to go out. The lion's share of that money goes to police and fire. Naturally, when there's a disaster, that's who you call. However, the fallout from that disaster is emergency medical services, and that is not being adequately funded. Matter of fact, they're getting a very small portion of that money. So therefore, if we have a medical emergency, folks, there's a possibility that we simply won't be able to provide the services that are needed. So looking at it, we are looking at it as a crisis. And so I'll wait till Mr. Lawton gives, unless you want to talk about that now, Bob. Has he contacted you?
He has contacted me, received an email from him with a draft copy of the letter. We'll be bringing that to this board as a presentation in support of the agency's request that the board authorized me to sign a letter in support of their position on this.
Great.
I think the letter should be signed by the chair if it's coming from the board.
Yeah, it will be.
Well, Bob would recommend that he would sign it, I think.
Oh, okay.
The chair.
That's fine. The chair of the board.
I mean, it's no offense, but...
None taken.
I would be honored to co-sign it with you if you'd like to make it a
You may
joint
have the honor. You may
communication.
have the honor to yourself.
I might add that CSAC and RCRC are much in support of this. As a matter of fact, I have a sample of a letter here that RCRC has written in support of this. So it's really a statewide funding crisis for emergency medical services. So I'll look forward to seeing that come to the board.
Bill, did you, I'm not sure I heard in your presentation that some of the things you raised were beyond the question of funding. It was just a question of a public understanding of the EMS oversight process. Are you desirous of having a study session or some public hearing that might help make that more clear?
I think this presentation entails that. It's very comprehensive. It all stems from the EMS Act of 1981, where the state mandated certain emergency medical services be provided by counties. Well, the small counties really can't afford it. I believe a couple of years ago we looked into that once again. This county, by the way, I neglected to tell you this, every year we get evaluated for how much we need to contribute because it's by population annually. So this, for this coming year, for the fiscal year 2008-2009, the estimate, they received these estimates, the population at 46,028 people, plus 2,301, whatever that comes out to, times 41 cents per resident, which means that Calaveras County contributes matching funds to the regional agency of $19,815. The last estimate I heard by people trying to see what it would cost this county to provide their own emergency medical services agency was in the neighborhood of $200,000 to $250,000. So I'd say we have quite a bargain here. And the presentation will show you the services that are mandated. This is just the mandated things, not necessarily what comes over and above that. And it's mandated by the state so that there would be equal emergency medical services throughout the state, regardless if the county is like Los Angeles County, which is the largest in population, or to Alpine, which is arguably the smallest. And they're required to plan and implement the EMS system, coordinate, regulate EMS personnel and resources, provide local independent medical oversight for the EMS system, set local medical protocol and policy, approve EMT and paramedic training programs and continuing education, issue the state EMT certifications, approve advanced life support ground and air operations, designate base hospitals, trauma centers, and specialty centers, oversee quality of patient care and evaluate the EMS system, develop exclusive areas of operation for ambulance service contracts and trauma quality improvement, multi-casualty disease and disaster plans, and resolve local EMS system issues. Well, that's a bunch. You'd have to create an agency to do that. And because of that, we belong to a region, like most of the counties in California, so that we can pool resources. And the Mountain Valley Emergency Medical Services Agency is our agency. They run the emergency medical services agency for this county that encompasses those duties. And I'm sure Mr. Andrews will go over that and be able to answer any questions for anybody that has them.
Thank you. Anything further?
That's it.
Mr. Tryon.
I also will be at the LAFCO meeting next Monday. I'll be at a city council meeting this evening in Angels. I also am interested in the legal access issue, Robert. We had a study session. The board gave very clear direction. I don't think it would take an hour to incorporate the board's direction into code and bring it back as an action item so we can adopt it. I understand your department is, in fact, implementing that direction, but I think it needs to be placed into code. And I also, am I correct that we are still going to have a study session on the driveway slope issues?
Yes, on the 4th, March 4th.
So what are the interim meetings about?
It's a stakeholders group that we started when the issue first came up, and it went to the Fire Chiefs Association. It's going back to stakeholders. Mike Miller will be there.
Then it's well taken care of.
I'm not sure. In fact, Jim, would you be able to come or think about it?
I'd have to check my calendar.
Jim.
I've actually been meeting with Mike, and I think he'll be fully prepared with my views on it.
Okay, because there's lots of perceptions of legal interpretation.
Right, I understand that.
Thank you. I mean, if you could, it would be nice. I know it's up high and there's some snow on the ground, but maybe Mr. Miller could bring you, or someone can, with four-wheel drive. The roads are clear.
I can manage. I'm sure I can make it.
Oh, that's right. You have a Subaru.
And a motorcycle.
Oh, and a motorcycle.
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. My meetings this week include, let's see, The Public Works Director interviews tomorrow, the Parks and Rec Commission at the CCWD on Wednesday evening at 6. The West Point Fire meeting on the 23rd, Saturday. Also wanted to mention a couple of things, along with other supervisors, and maybe to even greater extent, the issue of legal access in my district has become, has engulfed 20 different roads in District 2 in conflict. We really do need to have that study session. There are issues that were not apparent at the last time we studied it that have become apparent subsequently, and it's my great desire that we take a close look at this and make sure that what we're doing is not just legal but also right. We have some obligations to people that we approved things some time ago. It's not good enough to just say, well, that wasn't right and you're on your own, go sue each other. I'm very hopeful that we can come up with some positive responses. And it just happened to wind up on a week-long kayak experience with a person from a title company in Kings County in the Pacific Northwest, with a lot of rural areas within that, along with the city of Seattle, and found that title companies up there play a significant role in relation to legal access issues, and would very much like to share that in our coming study session. What I want to know is, when is that study session? I believe it was originally slated for the month of February, but I don't see that on the calendar. Would very much like that to be, if not concurrent with the driveway issue, which I think has kind of a legal access aspect to it. I'd sure like to see it be in close proximity to it. Can we get this scheduled?
Well, are we going back to a study session? Because we had a study session and gave direction. We're supposed to come back as code, but well, I don't know, we're going to reopen it all up again?
Well, regardless of whether it's a study session or an action, I do think we need to take action, but I'd also like to make sure that we are taking action with the necessary information and things that have happened since we last studied it.
I will get together with Stephanie immediately, and we'll make sure it's as soon as we can get it on the next an agenda. I don't want to say the next agenda, but
all right.
Okay.
If there's a study aspect to it, I sure would not want that to be the exclusion of taking action,
sure.
Which I believe the board is ready to
we had,
commit to.
I think, a couple study sessions on it and gave direction. So
right.
Yes, at least
the question is, when do we ever bring closure, I guess?
We'll get it back.
All right. Could I request that that be done no later than the next board meeting, that we have a clarity as to the date? Please. Thank you. Secondly, I had an interesting communication where the Sierra Conservancy is now moving into its second quarter of distributions. This year, $17 million will be distributed between the different sub-regions. And we have a region called the South Central sub-region, and there are many projects that have been proposed from Mariposa, Calaveras, Tuolumne, and Amador counties that we will be voting on March the 12th and 13th. There are two projects in particular from Calaveras that are on the bubble here. One is the Regional Water and Wastewater Reconnaissance Study for the Highway 4 corridor with $90,000 proposed, and another is the restoration of channel and floodplain processes of the lower Calaveras River. I have basic paperwork on this, but have not heard from the agencies or the people who have made these proposals, and I'm hopeful that somebody listening in on this broadcast or one of the supervisors whose district is engaged in this can let me know as much information prior to the vote, so that when we're discussing this and arguing our cases down.
I think the Highway 4 project is being undertaken by CCWD. At least they have a concurrent.
All right.
If it's not part of it, it's the concurrent project with CCWD, and I think that needs to get coordinated with them.
Okay, I'll call them right away.
Yes, I just
told you I suspected.
I
study now.
I would think that the Calaveras River Channel is
also CCWD. All right. I will follow that up. If any of you have an interest.
Because they're doing a sewer and water study for the Highway 4 corridor, CCWD, seeing if we can come up with some more regional type solutions to sewer and water issues.
All right.
Supervisor Walensky, there was also a grant application. I'm not sure that it got in under the wire for the ones that you're reading there, but that HCP grant proposal to fund our HCP study here.
Yeah, I believe that's in the third quarter considerations. Okay. This is second quarter. I should also mention that it appears that the Love Creek Working Forest Project Phase 2 is slated for approval. Staff is recommending that, whereas the other two are on the bubble and need further explanation.
What does on the bubble mean?
It means that they don't have staff recommendation but have not been fully rejected yet and will be the subject of a great deal of...
is this the new buzzword on the bubble?
Well, I made that up myself, actually.
Oh,
it's not a term of art. But
it's a bricklayer term. So.
Yeah. At any rate, it seems to me if we want those two things to go, that we'll need to present further information and best arguments within the next week to week and a half. And that's all I have. How about our administration? Any reports?
Okay. Had the pleasure of attending a Calaveras County Water District meeting last week. We discussed they were discussing their lobbying package, and the subject came up of the extent to which the county and the Water District could find common cause and adopt consistent positions or share the services of a lobbyist. That will be explored at the staff level between my office and their executive director to see how far we might be able to go with them. Their contract has a 30-day notice period, so there's some flexibility at their end, and we may be able to craft something with them over a period of time. I had the opportunity to meet the director of the San Andreas Sanitary District. Shortly after that meeting, the discussion of some of the funding that may be available due to the Water District's efforts in Washington for wastewater treatment. I'll be appearing at the Murphy's Community Club along with the new hospital director, Feliciano Veron, on February 26th. And we had a meeting last week on Cosgrove Creek with Supervisor Claudino, Public Works, and Representative Lundgren's staff to discuss moving forward with the Corps of Engineers on addressing that situation in the immediate sense, if not the larger project.
Excellent. Jim?
Nothing to report, but I did want to make a comment on the legal access issue, thinking about it, because it wasn't clear to me whether the board wanted to have it as an action item or a study session. Some time ago, my office Janice worked to put together a list, actually, really of exceptions to the rule, which it seems to me is what the board needs to resolve.
That's right.
Not whether
we did
legal access is required, but no, there's a variety of proposed exceptions to that
yes.
rule, existing structures, that sort of, and a long list of things where access is through federal property, where no easement is possible. So the board may want to consider that the discussion of those exceptions may take longer than may call for a study session.
Jim, we had a discussion of those exemptions. Okay. That was the study session. And then the board reached consensus on that, and nothing's ever come back.
Okay.
That doesn't mean you can't revisit it, but I mean, we did it.
Then we're ready to go.
Well, with the possible exception that there may be other exemptions that have been considered by stakeholder groups in the interim and that bear at least some discussion before closing the door on it.
I guess the main point wasn't clear to me whether you want to have a study session or not.
Well, I wonder whether we could do something that many other boards do, which is to have a study component on a subject followed by action. It's a hybrid of what we've been doing, but to my way of thinking, if we need further discussion, even a refresher, that might be worth it. And if there are additional exemptions for people to bring forward, those should be put in writing and given to the board before that time, and we should be ready to take action on it that day after discussion.
Okay.
Any differences with that approach?
Sounds good.
Okay, great. Madeline, anything to report? All right. We will now take the board into recess and convene or reconstitute ourselves as the Public Authority Governing Board. The only agenda item that I have is a closed session for the IHSS Public Authority. However, I believe it's critical for us when we do open a board meeting that we invite public comment if there is any on the IHSS Public Authority, any issue not on the agenda. Is there any such comment in the room? Any board comment on the Public Authority? Inasmuch as there is none, I will close the open part of this and convene the closed session, which is a conference with labor negotiator, assistant CAO, HR director, pursuant to Government Code 54957.6, human resources. I will also then, following that, reconvene the board meeting for a series of closed sessions that are on your agenda. So this does end the public component of this until 11 o'clock, where we will reconvene a series of study sessions, the first of which will be a very scintillating report on the watershed assessment tool and its application.
At 10:30.
And a 10:30 discussion of programs and projects for the 2008 Community Development Block Grant applications, followed by the 11 o'clock. So we'll have half hour of closed sessions commencing at 10.
Did I misunderstand? We're not going to have a presentation on the IHSS?
No, we're going in. We are still constituted right now as an IHSS governing board. At 10 o'clock, we will move to a closed session. And hopefully Francine is listening in on this and can join us. We are running about half an hour behind. This is the 11 o'clock study session, or the scheduled 11 o'clock study session on the watershed assessment tool. And we'll have some discussion about whether or how to apply this to our planning process. Director Moreno.
Good morning, Stephanie Moreno, Director of Community Development. Brian Moss, the Administrator for the Environmental Management Agency, is also here. This was a joint staff report from the two of us relative to the Watershed Analysis Risk Management Framework model that will be presented today by these partners here. We're real excited about this tool as a possibility for use in not only long-range planning, such as our general plan update, but in current planning projects, eventually to take a look at how the growth impacts affect water quality. Along the McCallum River is what this model is used for, but we're hoping that the board would agree that it's a useful tool to expand to other watersheds within the county, and that is the recommendations that we're making as you consider what we do with this tool after you see how informative and useful it is as a planning tool for the county.
All right, thank you. And we do have visitors. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Eileen White, and I'm the manager of the Water Department for East Bay Mud, and I was also the authority member who was the program director for this project. And with me,
I'm Allison Watson, and I'm with RMC Water and Environment, which is a consulting firm. And we were the primary consultant working on this project to develop the tools and work with our great stakeholder group.
And I guess just for the record, I am still a board member of the Upper McCallum Watershed Authority, which was the sponsoring group that brought this into the region, working in conjunction with East Bay Municipal Utility District, which provided the vast bulk of the funds for the study and the implementation here.
okay.
So, take it away.
Today's agenda, we're going to provide a little background on the project. I know there's some time constraints. We're starting a little late, so I won't spend too much time on it. We're going to talk about using warmth and land use planning, and Alice and I are real excited to be here, and you guys have invited us to hear about warmth and how it can be a useful tool here in the county as you go forward with your land use planning. You're all aware the Upper McCallum River Watershed Assessment and Planning Project includes the Upper McCallum River Watershed, which spans over 3 counties, Alpine County, Amador County, and Calaveras County. The watershed includes 578 square miles, and it includes all the lands that drain into the main stem, North Fork, Middle Fork, and South Fork of the McCallum River. Highway 49 is the downstream boundary, and Highway 49 spans from Jackson to McCallum Hill. And then East Bay Mud's primary drinking water supply is downstream a little bit, and that's Hardy Reservoir, and that provides about 90% of the water to East Bay Mud's 1.3 million customers. The Upper McCallum River Watershed Authority was initiated to protect and improve water quality. We wanted to not only come up with a bunch of reports, but we wanted to develop methods for long-term water quality evaluation. And the goal of the project was to create watershed management tools. We were very fortunate that, as Supervisor Walensky said, this was sponsored by the Upper McCallum River Watershed Authority, and the members include members from the 3 counties, Alpine, Amador, and Calaveras County, along with members from Alpine County Water Agency, Amador County Water Agency, Calaveras County Water Agency, and then East Bay Mud, Jackson Valley, and then Calaveras Public Utilities District. We're very fortunate with this project, first, that we got Prop 50 and Prop 84 grant funding for this project. This project was completed last month. It was completed ahead of schedule and under budget. And it was a very successful project. It was great teamwork effort. This was a PAC, a Project Advisory Committee-driven process. And the project started with us hiring the consultants, and Allison from RMC was our key project manager from the consultant side, and I was from the authority. And we solicited interest from who could bring certain expertise, who had an interest in maintaining and improving source water quality within the watershed. And we're very fortunate that the list before you, including Alpine, Amador, and Rural Water Agency. We have some of the members here today, Bob, Dean, Ed Patterson, who were very involved. Everybody came. We met bi-monthly. We met for several hours. There was a lot of reports to review. There was a lot of important decisions to be made. There was a lot of great sharing of water quality data. And we're fortunate that at the end of this, we not only produced some excellent reports, but we also developed a model. As I said, one of the goals, the primary goal was to maintain and improve source water quality within the watershed. And we had numerous meetings over the 3-year process. And what we came up with is we developed a water quality database, getting the different water quality data that was available. And then from there, we decided, do we want to do a lot more monitoring, spending the money that we had from the state grant funding, or do we want to develop a tool that would be helpful in the future? And there was a consensus of the group that they really wanted a tool that we could use for land use planning in the future. And that's how the PAC selected this, what we call the WARMP model, which stands for Watershed Analysis Risk Management Framework. This is a physically based dynamic watershed model. It simulates stream flow and water quality. The good news is it's in the public domain, it's user-friendly, and it's for you, it's free, because we went through this project over 3 years working together. We have developed the watershed model for the Upper McCallum River watershed. I think what we'll be talking about today is how you could leverage, as I said, this 3-year-long effort, $1.3 million in funding, and a lot of volunteer time by the PAC members, along with staff like myself. And we've got this model. And the goal is when the project is complete, not just to have, we got a report which talks about watershed management. It identifies the biggest vulnerability in the Upper McCallum River watershed is really leaking septic systems. And so this model can be a useful tool as you go forward in land use planning. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Allison, who's going to give you a little more background and tell you how it can be used for land use planning.
Thank you. Okay, first a little bit of background on watershed modeling and the WARMP modeling in general. So here we have just a picture of a watershed, and as everybody knows, there are a lot of different activities that go on in a watershed. So you might have agriculture, mining, some industry, some residential development, and all of these things together result in your water flow, your stream flow, as well as your water quality. And what the model does is take data inputs, so things like land use in the watershed, the topography, meteorology data, and air quality data, and mathematically relate these different data sources so that it can simulate what the stream flow and water quality will be in the watershed. In order to do this, if you think about it, basically what you're doing is simulating what happens when a raindrop falls. What does it hit? What does it pick up? Where does it land? Where does it go? So in order to do this effectively, it's very important to have a detailed land use and land cover map. And we just wanted to put this up here to show you this is the land cover and land use map that we used in the model, which has 21 different categories of land use ranging from rural residential to 90% coniferous. And basically it's just to show you that a lot of effort went into developing this land use layer so that we could accurately understand what the stream flow would be and what the water quality would be. And this map was developed with a lot of input, too, from the local community to make sure that we had it right, because that's one of the tougher things, as I'm sure you know. In more rural areas, sometimes it can be difficult to go online and download data that's current and accurate. So we did quite a bit of effort to come up with a detailed, accurate map as a basis for this model. And with the data that we collected and the water quality data and stream flow data that we had for the watershed, we calibrated the model. And basically what we found is that the model results really did match what we had seen in the past. So when people had gone out and taken stream flow measurements and taken water quality measurements, when we ran the model, what we were seeing was a very good match to what we expected to see. And we were happy about that because it means the model is well calibrated and can be used to run predictive scenarios. So the only important take-home message from this slide is just that the orange dots on this are observed data and the blue line is simulated data, and they overlap really well, which is what you want to see with a model. It means you're doing a good job of simulating what you're actually seeing. Once we had developed the model, we went through and did a watershed assessment. And we took all of the historical water quality data that we had collected and all of the simulated data that came out of the model. And we looked at more than 50 different water quality parameters on the north, middle, and south forks of the McCullum to see what the water quality is. We had some data, we wanted to see it as a bigger picture and see what the issues might be if there were any. And what we did find was that fecal coliform is a bit of a problem, particularly on the middle fork. Fecal coliform is a subset of coliform bacteria, and it's found in the intestines of warm-blooded animals, including humans. And from our modeling, what we were able to determine is that the apparent primary source of the elevated fecal coliform concentrations on the middle fork is septics. Minor contributions, of course, came from recreation, grazing, wildlife contributions, and all of the other contributions of fecal coliform, but the primary source that we found was septic systems along the McCullum. This plot shows main stem, north fork, middle fork, and south fork average concentrations. And what you want to note here is the red circle shows that average middle fork concentrations of fecal coliform exceed the basin plan objective. And the basin plan objective is basically established in order to preserve, for public health, for body contact recreation. So for swimming, this is what they consider to be a safe concentration. So through our assessment, we found that the middle fork actually has a bit of a problem in meeting the basin plan objective. What this tells us is that fecal coliform and other pathogens, because fecal coliform we usually look at because it's cheaper and easier to look at, but it's an indicator of contamination, so we expect things like E. coli and some more insidious pathogens to also be present, that they're a problem on the middle fork. And based on what we've seen as the apparent primary cause, we expect the south fork to be at risk. While it's not currently over the basin plan objective, we expect it to also be at risk. And this tells us managing pathogen loading is going to be critical to the safety of the river for ongoing recreational uses. This is just a screenshot from a September 2006 article in the Stockton Record, where basically some studies had been done, some fecal coliform data had been collected, and there was a link, a casual link made between fecal coliform concentrations and ear infections in children swimming in the McCullum. Now, I'm not saying that this is evidence that fecal coliform concentrations from septics cause those ear infections, but it shows that there is other evidence out there that if it's not a serious problem today, it's going to be, and it does look like it's actually a problem already. So the watershed assessment found microbial pathogens to be a problem, and because septics are the primary contributor, what this tells us is that current septic system policies may not be sufficient to protect public health from septic systems. The WARMP tool that we've talked a little bit about, the model, can be used to simulate and prevent future impacts caused by today's planning decisions, particularly when it comes to looking at septics and how development is happening when it comes to septics and the proximity to the river and other conditions that can affect water quality. So just as a little bit of background, I think you're all pretty familiar with how septic systems work, but we often do get the question, well, why would septic systems cause a problem if they're not leaking? And basically, we wanted to talk a little bit about the fundamental design of septic systems. They have two main components. There's a septic tank and a drain field. The septic tank is basically where the waste comes into the tank and sludge is separated out from wastewater, and scum floats at the top. So what you're trying to get at is this wastewater in the middle, and a solid rock bottom, and the scum is at the top. And the wastewater then is released into the drain field. And the purpose of the drain field is to allow the wastewater to travel through the soils. And in the soils, there's purification that happens before it comes into contact with things like groundwater, which could be connected to your surface water, which can cause you to see elevated pathogens and things like we've been seeing on the colony. So even a properly functioning septic system can cause contribution of fecal coliform if, for example, the groundwater is too high and you don't have enough purification happening in the soils. Of course, if the tank itself is leaking, that can be a problem. So the way the septic system is designed and how it's maintained is very important to the proper functioning of the septic system because it's so dependent on the soil layer. That's how you get your purification, because otherwise you're essentially just releasing wastewater into the ground. Now, as I think you're familiar from discussions we've heard today and in the past, the preferred alternative to protect water quality is to go to wastewater collection systems. So you're basically eliminating that tank, you're eliminating the drain field, so you're eliminating the possibility of issues associated with your septic systems. As we also know, this can be expensive, but this is the preferred method because this is really how you can be sure that you're not leaching wastewater into your groundwater or surface water. So that was just a little bit of background refresher on how septic systems work. The warmth tool we've been talking about can be used to simulate the effects of land use on water quality. And the way that you do that is by comparing the potential impacts of build-out scenarios. You could, for example, in your general planning process, you could run two different land use simulations and look at the water quality output for those and have a sense for how the different build-up scenarios would affect your water quality. You can compare the impacts of sprawl versus compact growth in a similar way. It's pretty much going back to that land use map, how you change the land use. And you can compare the impacts of septic systems to collection systems. Septic systems are a direct input into the model. So by changing where your septic systems are located, how many they are, those sorts of things, you can compare how your development and particularly your septic systems are influencing your water quality. We ran a scenario in WARP just as an example for this presentation to demonstrate the impact of land development. And what we did is looked at really increasing rural residential development near West Point in the circled area. So really we've got West Point and Wilseyville and Bunnerville all included in that. And to do that, we've got a screenshot of part of the WARMP model. Basically what the WARMP model does is you tell the model this is the area we're looking at, and you divide it up into little chunks or catchments. And in each catchment, because you've developed that land use layer, you're telling the model what percentage is rural residential, how many septics you've got, where they're located. So by going into the model now and just changing that and saying, okay, in this area, we've actually got 30% more rural residential development, we've got 30% more septics, you can just run a basic scenario to see what how your output changes. This plot shows the graphical output from the model in this scenario that we ran, this quick scenario. And what you see is you can compare side by side your current scenario and then your change scenario. So what you see here is that there's a green line over the blue line. And the green line is the result of us just increasing by 30% the number of septics in the rural residential development in that little red circle. And that gives you a sense for how the fecal coliform concentrations would change if that were to happen. You can also, if you're not interested in graphs and you're more interested in the numbers and the loading, You can also get that directly out of the model. This just shows another screen that you can see in the model that compares the two side by side, your current condition and your increase by 30%, and how that would be projected to increase fecal coliform loading from each of the different types of land use. So you can see the impact from increasing the rural residential, and you can see the increase, the change from increasing the number of septic systems as well. So basically, by having the ability to run different scenarios like this, you can compare the cumulative impacts of different scenarios. You can compare different scenarios to each other, as we just showed you. You can look at the benefit of requiring collection systems as opposed to septics for water quality. You can identify areas that are at the greatest risk of contamination by septics by trying to place development in different areas and seeing what the outputs are. And you can look at other water quality parameters from runoff and rural residential development separately from the septics themselves. Ways that the model could be used might be to require simulation for development projects greater than an acre to determine necessary mitigations. So if you have a development that's going in that's greater than an acre, you can see what the projected impact of that is, and that can help you to develop your mitigations for that project. And you can also use this to look at long-term water quality impacts that might actually cause things like swimming bans or threaten public health based on the changes in water quality concentrations resulting from those decisions. So generally, you can use the model to assess the long-term improvements to water quality that you need to gain information on potential water quantity and quality impacts by growth. In Calaveras County in particular, the general plan update is considering impacts of land use options on hydrology and water quality. And this tool can be used to inform that. The tool is developed, it's ready to go for your use, and you can use it now to look at some of these different scenarios that you're looking at and see what the impacts might be to hydrology and water quality. In addition, you could opt to use the model to assess impacts of specific proposals at the project review stage. And once staff are comfortable with WARMP, and we're really happy actually, we did have some staff come to a training that we provided as part of the project to get trained on how to use the model. But once staff are comfortable with WARMP, you could use this tool to actually enhance your stormwater regulations and increase specificity based on what kind of parameters you might see from runoff and what kind of impacts you might see from runoff from rural residential, even separate from septics. And another way you might choose to use it would be to run the model quarterly for development projects and keep a current understanding or a snapshot of how water quality is changing in the county, in at least this portion of the county. Now, as we've mentioned, this is currently limited to the Upper McCollum watershed, but it's important to note that the cost to extend the model to neighboring watersheds would be significantly lower than the cost to do the McCollum project. The McCollum project had a significant stakeholder process, decided even how to approach this whole project, picking the model, developing the model, all of these things that have now been done once. And by doing it once, a process has been established that can be repeatable. So there is economy associated with extending the model, and there are grant funding opportunities that could enable the model to be extended into Calaveras and Stanislaus watersheds. The cost to do that really depends on the extent of stakeholder involvement and your specific needs, and it really does range. I showed you that detailed land use map because there's a lot of land use information you can download off the internet, and it's not incredibly specific, and the more specific you are, the better quality your results are going to be. So it really is a bit of an envelope, and depending on your specific needs, the cost would vary, but there are a lot of grant opportunities out there that could help to extend this, so it could be used in the other watersheds as well. Now that's the WARMP tool, and it is right now only for the Upper McCollum. We have another tool that we wanted to talk to you about very quickly also, which is the map of water quality vulnerability zones. And this is a map that we developed for the project, again, just for the Upper McCollum watershed now, that considers slope, proximity to water, soils, and vegetation to establish very high, medium, and low vulnerability classifications. And when we talk about vulnerability for this purpose, we're talking about the likelihood to transport parameters to the water. So the likelihood that contaminants would be transported. So what we're essentially doing is identifying locations in the watershed that are more vulnerable to contaminant transport. And this is what the map looks like now for the Upper McCollum watershed. This is actually a fairly simple process to come up with this. It's basically a process of taking some GIS and compositing the layers. And from talking with Dave Pestizo and other staff, you have the information to do this now for the entire county. And it's a fairly simple process that we would be happy to help you through. And if you can't immediately update the warmth model, this is a tool that you can use immediately to start informing your planning decisions. This tool could be used as a guideline, for example, for siting development. So, trying to steer development away from more vulnerable areas of the county. You could use it to note locations where you might want to consider special restrictions to protect water quality because there is a higher vulnerability to transport contaminants. And again, as I said, we only have this now for the Upper McCollum. The process to extend this tool to the rest of the county to be used now is fairly straightforward, and you have the information, and you could actually be using this pretty much immediately. So that's all I had in terms of background on the tools that we've developed that we think might be useful to you, but we'd be happy to answer any questions you have about the tool or how you might use it.
Any questions from the board? I know we have other staff comments. Staff comments, recommendations.
Brian Moss, Environmental Management Agency. Thank you two for a job well done there. Just want to bring up some issues, just observations. There's areas of the county, of course, CCWD is here with us today, but wherein there are some possibilities of maybe tying into some tight lines if we have existing tight lines for wastewater treatment plants, and I think that that's always a good idea. As far as septic systems impacting surface waters, there was one site that Supervisor Walensky and I reviewed one day, and those would likely be very old systems that aren't necessarily surfacing on the ground as stated here, but maybe we don't have enough filterable material between the time it leaves the bottom of the trench of the leach field and it actually hits the basin, which in this case would be a river surface water body. So with that said, I think that we need to look at the fiscal issue as far as where can we today get the biggest impact and the biggest bang for our buck. Supervisor Walensky and I'm speaking of that one site that we reviewed together, there's actually a solution there where people could actually tie into a tight line working with Calaveras County Water District and resolve that problem, much in the same way we dealt with an issue in Marita's district, which was called Safari Mobile Home Park, where we had a problem with the leach field there for 30 years and we were able to tie into sewer. So I think that's one of the first things I think we need to look at as a county is what do we have out there today, what is physically possible, and what is also physically possible. What's existing in the ground as far as collection systems, wastewater treatment plants, that kind of thing. Secondly, identify where the problems are. How can we identify those places first and get those systems taken care of if indeed they are failing, as an example. So I just wanted to bring that up. The other issue is, of course, today we're looking at engineered systems more and more and more in the county as I continue to get my feet wet with on-site. And with those engineered systems, they, of course, are pre-treated systems. So you're not going to get the coliform loadings. At least it's hoped you're not going to get the coliform loadings, let's say, that you would with a standard system if you're talking about an intermittent sand filter or another kind of engineered system wherein we're actually pre-treating that effluent before it hits the bottom of the trench. What's interesting about this and the interesting timing of this is we're getting poised to actually redraft the on-site sewage regulations. So this will also be very helpful for us too, especially when you look at depth to groundwater. We look at, as far as bottom of the trench, how much filterable material do we have to deal with, and if we don't have enough, what's the balance between pretreatment and filterable material that's actually out in the environment, so that indeed we are not impacting waters of the state, and that's really the issue here. So I just wanted to make those comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephanie Moreno, Director of Community Development. With all that Brian has said, on-site sewage was under my agency for a number of months, and we did identify a number of problems relative to installation of septic system. I think that Brian Moss has done a good job of taking a look at those issues and trying to resolve those, and I think the rewriting of the regulations will go a long ways towards that. That being said, however, we do have interim policy guidelines in place for the general plan update that the board has indicated they would like to see the utilization of septic systems for new development be reduced, or at least only occur on large parcel sizes. So we're hopeful that this model, which we will begin to use for the McCollum and the general plan update, will help the board decide what they'd like to see with the continued use of septic systems, especially on small parcels, as we move forward with our general plan update. I don't think we fixed all of the problems. I think that there are still issues, and we certainly haven't addressed the issue of putting septic systems on quarter and half acre lots in some areas of the county. Existing lots are still taking in septic systems, and those are things that will need to be addressed. This model, if extended over to the other watersheds, would be helpful in making those policy decisions, and that's why I think it's very timely, so that the board has the scientific basis for making some of the policy decisions that will be necessary for the general plan update.
One thing I wanted to see whether we could get some sense of. It looks to me that what we've been given, just inherited here, dropped into our lap, is something that we can use for maybe about 45% of the county's territory. The question that I have, and it's not yet clear, is what does it take to extend this tool? We have two tools, one of which is ready to use in the rest of the county, and the question is how can we get up and running, and what are the interest groups? Is CCWD, CPUD, others interested in the Calaveras and the Stanislaus watershed? Will we be up and running in time to be able to use that with the same science that we have for the rest of the county? And if so, what would the cost be, and who might bear it, given that we're broke?
My understanding, first of all, it's been developed for the McCollum, so we can use it now, and we have staff that's been trained, and we intend to use it for the general plan update. Relative to expansion to the Calaveras and Stanislaus, I'll let CCWD address how they feel about that, but my understanding in the past is it would also be a useful tool for them as well in doing some planning. Most of their planning is in response to the things that we do, however, so we need to be partners in the process. In order to expand it to the other watersheds, my understanding is it would be probably a minimum of $250,000 that would be needed to gather the data and extend the model, because the model will work. It's just you have to load it with the data from the other watersheds. We believe that we would be likely candidates, especially over on the Stanislaus piece, where we do believe that there are some water quality issues, for grant funding. It would be a matter of having staff assigned, or perhaps CCWD co-partnering to put some grant applications together and become partners in getting this done. Would we be able to get grant money in time to complete the general plan update? I don't know the answer to that. I think that is not likely that we could, but we certainly won't get any if we don't apply. So I think that it would be useful for us to have a meeting immediately with CCWD and the water districts, the other water districts that are on the other watersheds, and talk about partnering and funding and how to make this a tool for everybody.
Doesn't Angels Camp also get its water from one of these watersheds?
Angels Camp would be a likely partner, I think, for this process. And in fact, we have tentatively set a joint City Council board meeting to talk about growth issues, and this would be a good item for the agenda as well.
Are you looking for any input from the board on any of these decisions?
We would like to know if it would be worth our while to move forward to expand this. We believe it's so, but if the board's not interested in expansion, we have other areas that we can concentrate our resources on.
Well, let me first take input from the board members most directly affected by that expansion. That would be Tryon.
I am very
Callaway.
interested in the expansion, particularly in my district in the Highway 4 corridor would be the Stanislaus River, and I think we should include that.
Marita?
Yeah, I have some questions.
Sure.
On the simulated data and observed data, you did October. What was the reason for using October, since that's not a high runoff month?
The entire calibration period was from 1990 to 2005.
Right.
So I basically just showed a snapshot of the output. It was arbitrary what I showed, but we ran the simulation from 1990 to 2005.
Right, I saw that. I was just wondering why October was picked. I'm sure whatever month you picked, I'd ask the same question, but
Yeah, well,
it's a low runoff month.
Yeah. To be honest, that particular slide, let me see if I can find it, was used for a different purpose earlier, and for that purpose we had selected October because of the power fire. What we wanted to show was this is actually not the final calibration. The final calibration, as you see in October of 04, there are some orange dots that increased as a result of the power fire. So we went back in after this and modified the land use map that I showed you to add a burned area and simulate better how the water quality and hydrology changed following the power fire. So that was why it's October. It was not arbitrary for that purpose. It was arbitrary for this purpose.
Okay, thank you. Also, I think a couple later, where you have the basin plan objective and you show the middle four, that one, if I looked at this, I would be thinking, why is there a problem here? You only have one small spike in September. Why? So go ahead.
Okay. This graph was developed by taking data from 1990 through 2005 and averaging all of the points for January from 1990 to 2005 to come up with the January number. I'm doing the same thing for February through December. So that September green bar actually shows September data from 1990 through 2005.
Okay, I guess, but if the black line is considered the human health benchmark and everything is below it, am I reading it that everything else is fine except for that one spike? And then it's, I mean, not that any of it's fine, but I would say, why would we be developing a whole scenario if everything is below the benchmark?
If I could answer that, I think what I understand as a layperson is that they're saying that this is an annual trend that they're seeing on the river, that the summer months, which are the months that people go swimming in the river, they're seeing spikes in the bacteria content, and it's happening every year. It's not just 1 year that it's happening. So that's telling us that there's something going on that's causing that, and it may be, aside from water runoff, it may have some other things that are happening which would lead
but more important than that, this is a snapshot or a baseline, and we're talking about different kinds of land use for this area. In fact, several of the communities right there are talking about higher densities in their downtown. Some are talking about more development along the water shed itself, and the question about how many septics, where they should be, where you can do densities and where you ought to have densities, gives this as a starting point for planning for future land use. And I think that's what our goal was for this session, was to figure out not are we all messed up yet, but what are the ways to keep from being all messed up in the future. And if we are having some problems with one or another of the tributaries, Why is that? And does that mean that we should try to avoid further septic development along those same corridors? These are all good policy decisions which we've been making up sort of whimsically. We, as a board, alarmed by some of this, we took a measure to have future subdivisions less than 40 acres be subordinate to getting sewer and water. There may yet, through this model, be places that we could go considerably less than that because of geology, because of steepness of slope, because of soil structure and flora, which are all parts of the WRF model. But now at least we have a scientific tool for part of the county to decide where we can go less than 40s or where we shouldn't be at all. And I like the idea of it being based on science rather than simply fear-based whimsy.
Yes, and that's what we'd like to go, is to a scientific-based decision-making process on these type of issues, as opposed to public outcry and newspaper articles and things of that nature that may be a little bit out of context. I did also want to point out, if you were to do the modeling that we talked about increasing that area by 30%, those green bars would all start increasing as well. So that's the point of the modeling piece, is that you'd start seeing those ones that are close but not all the way above, start more of them going over the baseline. And this model would help us determine how much the area can support. Maybe they can only support 10% more septic systems without creating significant overages on the baseline objectives.
Well, if the board, like we did the CDBG for Habitat Humanity, my question had been, is this on water and sewer? And was told that it was, which goes back to one of your slides. Mm-hmm. I am, like Tom, very interested in the stand. My concern is most of the parcels are under an acre. There are many, many homes along the Stanislaus River that are older homes that I'm sure the lines would be well above what's considered healthy. So I've already asked for money for one subdivision, which becomes forget it. And, I sit and look at CCWD, who's the water purveyor in the Ebbets Pass corridor anyway. So there's issues that I don't know can the model address, because these are already developed lots that are predominantly under 1 acre. What happens when you do the infill versus in subdividing lots? I mean, the subdivision comes in, that's one thing, but you come in for a building permit, that's entirely different. The other is that when these older septic systems need to be repaired and they are within 50 feet of the river, and we're now saying you're supposed to be 100 feet, and they come in for a variance and we give a variance, what then should we be doing to have more engineered systems or more sophisticated systems? Because we're not going to say a house is, you have to give up your house, and the county's not going to buy the house, because that's happened with all of these older systems all along the stand. I'm not sure about in the lower Highway 4 corridor in Tom's area what size those parcels are. That's a huge issue in the upper 4 corridor. So what kinds of things should we then be doing?
Well, the first answer about whether parcel sizes below 1 acre can be addressed, the answer is absolutely. There are parcel sizes below 1 acre that are in the McCullough model. When we said 1 acre, it was to try to say, if you were to take forest and cut down all the trees and put it in a parking lot.
Not in my district, please.
How big would that have to be?
We do that up in her district and put subdivisions in.
How big would that have to be to likely show, just from the land cover, an impact in the model? And that's where we came up with about 1 acre. But when you're talking about development where you're looking at something like septics, you can still address it because you've got, first of all, your for each of those little catchments, and the average size is about an acre. You've got how much of this is rural residential and with X percentage of impervious surface, and how close is it to the river. So if that doesn't change with your infill, then you're not going to expect to see a change from the model. But if you are adding septics, even if it's on a smaller parcel size, that can absolutely be captured. So it doesn't. The parcel size is a little bit less important than the percentage of impervious surface and the number of septics.
So if you have already designated parcels, I mean, you're not putting any more parcels in, but you're adding in more septic systems because there is no sewer system.
You can absolutely capture that.
So then it goes back to the county making a decision that you have to have a more sophisticated septic system.
I know what you're going to talk. We dealt with this. I agree. It's a very tough issue, and it's something that at 2 of our PAC meetings we spent a lot of time discussing. One of the things we didn't want to come out of this project is, there's a lot of people we recognize in the Upper McCallamy on fixed incomes. You can't drive people out of their houses, and some of them probably, have had the same septic system for years and maybe never even had any maintenance on it. So we definitely, as a PAC, recognized and struggled with those issues. Those are tough issues to deal with. One of the things we thought that the model would be useful as part of developing the model is you got this water quality database. So at a minimum, you can identify your areas that are vulnerable right now and say, whatever, we're not going to allow any more fill in this area, or if we do, we're going to require whatever that they, as the policymakers maybe require that they enter into an agreement, they're going to get their system maintained, whatever, every other year, pumped out. So those are some of the ideas that we had, but we agree that the model was still a useful tool in planning and helping identify problems, and then at least you can make informed decisions as you go forward as how do you deal with those difficult areas, knowing that there's economic issues for the homeowners, and maybe the decision in some of those areas is not to allow more growth unless someone's going to actually put in a properly maintained septic system. Another issue that was just explored as part of our PAC meeting when we were discussing this is maybe something the county could do is at the point of sale. So granted, someone has their house, they live in it, they've got maybe a failing septic system and they don't have the economics to fix it, but maybe you put it in as a point of sale.
We do that.
Okay,
I mean,
great.
that's generally done. It's just that I'm talking infill here on hundreds and hundreds of lots.
Well, there are a couple of things that you would look at. So you'd be increasing your wastewater flow, which is one thing that the model definitely want to see the impact of that. And you would also probably be adding septics, or that might be one alternative. So you would look at, for this same area, maybe your impervious surface stays exactly the same, but you're adding 3 septics because of infill. What does that do? And is that an acceptable increase in water quality parameters, or is it not? And if not, then that's when we would look probably at the more creative solutions of is there a wastewater system nearby that could tie in? Are there other alternatives such as community leach fields, or there's a variety of different things that you could look at.
Thank you.
Russ, Bill?
No, I appreciate the presentation. It's obviously a lot of work went into this, and to respond to what Marita and even Steve said, I recognize this as just what it is. It's a model and a tool, and it doesn't contain the solutions, of course, but it gives us the data, the science, to make decisions. And without that, it'd be pretty hard to make any decisions about where you want to go. So this model is adaptable, obviously, to other regions and other watersheds. So I think it's an essential tool for going forward, and I really appreciate your work.
I'm a little fearful and a little, I want to move cautiously on this. I mean, it seems to me a pretty basic assumption that if you have old and leaky septic systems alongside the river, the likelihood that you're going to find fecal material in the river is very high. And your data says that we predicted we were going to find it, and we found it. Now, am I prepared to use this document as a mechanism or a tool to prevent the possibility of installing septic systems in the balance of the county? No, and I hope that we would not do that. we clearly don't have the resources available to us to say that on a given day we're not going to use septic systems in this county anymore. So I would like to have it be kind of morphed into something that could be a balanced document, that in the beginning of it, that it could say that certainly septic systems have been and will continue to be a viable methodology in certain places where soils are right and conditions are right. But I'm just this thing is a kind of a hot. It's a hot report to me, and I think that we could really shoot ourselves in the foot by having people use it to draw conclusions that aren't really in it. Am I expressing my anxieties adequately?
If I could respond to that, Supervisor Thomas, it's no one's intention within CDA or environmental management to suggest or recommend that we no longer offer septic systems as an alternative for development in the county. But the reality is, on the smaller parcels, we are having some issues. Many of the replacements that are happening up in the district, the Highway 4 corridor, are in fact replacement systems, and there's no replacement area left if they fail. And so long term, we have to think of how we're going to provide sewer systems for those areas that are going to need them. People are spending a lot of money on engineered systems, and it's possible that we need to take a look at not just short-term fixes but long-term fixes, and this tool would be helpful. But I just want to stress that we recognize that septic systems are here to stay in a rural county.
Okay, and Marita, you had a comment?
Well, just to look at it differently than Russ does, I think I agree with Steve and Tom. If we don't know what we have, then we can't develop some solutions. And on the stand, we do not know what we have. We all take the educated guess. So if we don't have the methodology to do that, or the science. So to cut to the chase, I agree with Tom that we need to find a way to do it for the Stanislaus. I can't address the Calaveras. I'm not as familiar with it, but the board's made a very big decision saying you have to be on water and sewer. Then we better say on those places where we know we will not have a sewer system anytime in the foreseeable future, then we need to come up with other mechanisms that I would challenge environmental health to help us with. Otherwise, along with driveways, we have more unbuildable lots.
I'd like to make a comment or two myself. I've had an opportunity to watch this unfold and sort of worked on for some time, and as near as I can tell, this has a 96% predictability rate. That is, if you run a scenario, not for analyzing where we are right now, but if you take a look at, if you add this many people, if you do these number of septics in these particular places versus these other particular places, you run your scenarios out at about a 96% predictability as to what the impact on water quantity and quality would be for a particular watershed. I can't think of a more important tool relating to water for us to use. We've often had a lot of our development has been based on, do you have road access? And then we'll drill a hole and see whether water will seep out enough to disappear our septage. And we'll dig another hole to see if we've got enough water to draw out of some limestone fissure that for our drinking water. And then we'll see whether the two mix together over time. And but we don't test our wells. All we do is we test the river water below where we're living and see whether we're fouling our own nest. I think it's very much a relief that most months we've done okay. But as we deal with the pressures of growth, we need to know where to put it. This is not a stop growth issue, it's a direct growth issue. It is where do we have the underlying geology, the steepness of slope, the necessary soil and trees and other flora on it to make it a safe place to put a septic. And that will tell us, all that geology and all of that detail will also tell us where to concentrate these things and where to avoid them altogether and all things in between. With that science, we're going to have a better plan. It'll be another tool besides whether the road can carry you to the place. We'll now have some other factors that are equally scientific to sort out our future land use issues. I want to strongly recommend, and I'd like to see whether the board, whether we have consensus on this, that particularly because the stand is a place that is, we're drawing a lot of water and there's a lot of development up that way, that we do everything we can and we request that our staff look for, we're not going to be able to pay for this as a county, but we are the place where the community and the general plan will be created. If there are agencies out there, including the City of Angels, the CCWD, the CPUD, and others, would like to join us in applying for a grant that can cover the expenses to get the stand up and running on this in time, that we ought to get on this right away. That we should find out what staffs from what agencies are prepared to put any time into this, and that we apply to all the available. You know where the grants are. I know that the watershed issues are primary to the $17 million give out for the Sierra Conservancy. And that there's quick turnarounds for those funds. I don't know, how much they're willing to assist in this, but I think we ought to get on it. And I think we should do it with all due diligence and speed. I'm hoping that sentiment is present on the board majority, and I'd like to just run down the line and see whether that's okay. I would say maybe the Calaveras might be secondary since we can't do all things and we seem limited in our resources, but I'd be interested to hear what people say, and is there any more public input before we poll the board?
Well, it's into our lunch hour. I'm going to keep it real brief, but I do have a few comments I'd like to add. I've been doing some of this kind of modeling for over a decade, and I think Supervisor Walensky put it correctly when you stated that this provides a quantitative tool. Without it, you're at best guessing about impacts. And so the real value here is you're able to quantify by order of magnitudes and even get within certain maybe plus or minus 5% of what the impact is going to be versus best educated guess. We have educated people on staff, but when we're guessing, we're maybe in the order of plus or minus 25%. So where we're going in today's world is trying to get it within the plus or minus 5% bandwidth. So it does provide that quantitative tool. And Calaveras County, as you know, has a lot of topographic relief. From the upper watersheds down to the valley floor, you can't use a tool in a better place because every raindrop that falls on this county is moving rapidly through the system, and it's going to carry with it whatever land use that's in that area. And so there is pretty high susceptibility to water quality. So I wanted to point that out. The other thing is the western side of the county is the quickest growing. And unfortunately, that's not where this model is currently being used. So I think that there is a significant need to calibrate a model like this for the West County area, especially the Comanche Valley Springs area, the Copper Cove, Copperopolis area. And again, when it gets back to financing, this county is always under the gun in terms of finance, and we have a lot of available resources, but we're infrastructure poor. And this model is going to help us prioritize infrastructure. But again, with financing, especially grants, and if you're talking about state grants, there is no such thing as a 100% grant. It's extremely rare. It is possible, but usually what you're looking at is probably a 75% state grant, 25% local support. So we still have to come up with money even if we do get a state grant. And those state grants, as we were talking about under CDBG, they're no different. For every grant the state funds, you've got 5 applicants. And so it's very competitive. And the way we can help leverage our competitiveness is through regionally supporting this effort among the various water agencies in county. And so I want to underscore that importance, that we bring on as many partners as we can whenever we do a grant application. But in terms of the septic tanks, I know that's a focus because it is a priority that was identified in the McCollum Watershed Project. There's a lot of GIS. In fact, I'm still blown away by the Calaveras County GIS Department. We have some of the most advanced GIS in the state, and yet we're one of the more rural counties in the state. So I think that's a huge opportunity that can fold into this type of distributed model because it is GIS based. But in terms of septic tanks in the area, I think one thing that may be missing from the GIS, and this is where CCWD can work more close with the county, where we can put in where our septic lines are located, physically located. You have data on where the septic tanks are located. You can identify the priority areas that need to be corrected, and then we can look at what some of the options are for evaluating fixes. You know, connecting wastewater line is always a great idea, but we know it's the most expensive. And there's other options out there. We can go through those priorities, which fixes make the most economic sense, and that GIS and this tool will help quantify those types of things. But I also wanted to mention, you know, as part of the GIS department and extending it into Calaveras and the Stanislaus, you know, this county has phenomenal tools. We have digital terrain model we recently purchased, jointly purchased between CCWD and Calaveras County, and that wasn't used on this warmth model, but it's something that was purchased this last year, and we've already used that DTM model, which is a digital terrain model, and if you don't know, it basically has XYZ points for every, I forget what the every 5 meters. We got a point that has an XYZ associated with it. We're actually using that DTM in some of our pressure zone modeling for our water distribution lines. In the past, we used to go out and do surveying. And you know how expensive surveying is. We don't have to use surveying now. We're simply using the DTM, which is accurate enough to do pressure zone modeling. So we have the DTMs, we have the aerials, we have the vast GIS database. Those are tools that you're already, I don't know, 25, 40% there of extending this model into the Calaveras and the Stanislaus. It makes it much more easy to do this type of project with the tools we already have. A couple of things I just want to mention, I'm done, is CCWD is involved in the Stanislaus and Tuolumne River IRWMP. There's a meeting tomorrow. I've talked with county staff, the planning department. I think the county's coming on board with these types of efforts. But with the IRWMP and having what's called an IRWMP or IRWMP as some call it in place, it makes us eligible for grants that might help pay for these types of projects. Now I realize the IRWMP's not done yet, and so it's going to take some time to unfold as part of the process, but it is an effort that looks at land and water planning and ties the two together that would benefit from having a tool like this. And we're doing it not only for the Stanislaus and the Tuolumne, but also the McCollum and the Amador, it's called the MAC, the McCollum, Amador, Calaveras, but we're doing it for the McCollum and the Calaveras River watersheds. And so when we look at what projects meet the goals and objectives of managing the watershed, which includes infrastructure, which includes watershed and environmental restoration, this tool is something that's very helpful. And I want to also bring up CCWD's working with the county. We had a meeting with your General or Chief Administrative Officer Bob Lawton on our Water Resources Development Act, which is looking at doing conjunctive use in the Comanche Valley Springs area. We're looking at bringing millions of dollars in to increase the water supply reliability in an area that we know has some perennial groundwater problems. And that infrastructure is going to cost a lot of money. But through WARDA, we can also benefit from a model like this to help us understand the water quality impacts associated with various water supply scenarios. But I'll part with this last comment. This model, while we've been talking about water quality, you could actually use it for flood prediction. because it tracks soil moisture budget balances, and you can run scenarios with meteorology forecasts, understand what kind of flood zone or predicting floods, like on Cosgrove Creek. There's hydrology, there's groundwater management, and part of the award in the Comanche Valley Springs area, we're talking about water quality vulnerability zones, but there's also recharge zones for groundwater recharge that you may not want to develop. You may want to keep them open for getting surface water into the ground so that you can ensure a certain groundwater levels objectives met for people on wells. But there's a lot of value in this tool, and I think there's a need throughout the county. And I think with the financing, if we work together, I think we can be competitive and secure grant funding. So with that, I'll part.
Steve, I have one question.
Yes, Marita.
Why not include Alpine County? I mean, the McCollum and the Stan cross at Alpine County, and they're planning a lot of development up there. They have a water system up there.
Yeah.
Plus, there's little water systems as you come down the highway.
Right. Alpine County was a part, they're a part of UMRA. They're also a part of the MAC, and they were a part of the watershed grant process. There's only one issue. They're just a very small staff, but I think it's certainly worthwhile to keep them in the loop and make sure they're a partner in everything we're doing. So I agree with you.
Thank you.
All right. I guess I would turn to the board and ask for your thoughts on a couple of subjects. It strikes me that one of the things that seems to be consensus is that we want to include the STAN and we want to reach out to partners. The question is, what are we asking our staff to, what role do we play in relation to that outreach, and are we encouraging them to create those partnerships so that we can gain funding to accomplish that?
Well, I think we're asking them to. But if Stephanie says, well, this is going to take 6 months or a year in a full-time staff position, she or Brian need to come back to us, and we might say yay, nay, or find a grant. I hate using that term. But so I think there's support for doing this. I don't know what that looks like, though.
All right. It appears Director Dean has a comment on this.
I promise I'll be shorter than Ed. I'd like to make a plea for the Calaveras. It's the only river that we have totally within the boundaries of Calaveras County. And I have felt for a long time that the Calaveras has been a seriously compromised river. And just this last Labor Day, on Saturday and Sunday, or excuse me, Sunday and Monday of Labor Day, Department of Water Resources did a marathon water monitoring program where they did all the major rivers, all the rivers, in fact, of the Sierra. And there was one seriously compromised site on the Feather River. The second highest E. coli site was on the Calaveras at the Sheep Ranch Bridge of San Antonio Creek. So as we go along, we have to consider this as a broad-based issue. We have both the McCollum and the Stanislaus, which have some of their source water outside the county, but everything in the Calaveras is within the county. And I think we really need to address that one in addition to all the other ones. I'm not saying one over the other.
Calaveras, though, goes into San Joaquin.
Yeah, and they're getting all our garbage, quite frankly. But yeah, it does. But I'm talking about the headwaters. I'm talking about where the source water is.
That wasn't clear to me.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Does staff need any more direction than full encouragement to create the partnerships, seek the funds on the rest of the rivers, both Calaveras and Stan, but with the Stan as our, I believe, was the top priority within those two.
CCWD currently is doing a sewer and water study on the Highway 4 corridor. And it would be nice maybe if we could incorporate some of these, this model in that study. I think that would be very much be ideal, and then we basically have that corridor addressed, and then we have to come up with implementing policies to see that we get the sewer systems and the appropriated surface water systems and the like in place. So anyway, go ahead.
just wanted to make just a couple more comments, and that is, what are we doing today? First of all, to back what Ed was saying, indeed, we do have a very strong GIS program. One of the things we looked at when we did our groundwater report to Region 9 federal government, we looked at the standard versus engineered system. So we actually do have a bit of a database right now for where the engineered are versus the standard starting in 2000. We do need to pick that up. However, there's a lot of work to be done there. Matter of fact, the on-site inspectors I'm going to arm with GPS units for that purpose. Also wanted to state that most of the repairs that you're seeing today are necessitated by the fact that we have a failing septic system. What is a failing septic system? Well, classically, that's sewage on the surface of the ground. That's not necessarily what we're talking about today. We're talking about a different type of failure, and of course that is the lack of filtration, and therefore the lack of filtration in the sewage actually affecting water bodies of the state. So we're kind of broadening our horizon, if you will, as to what indeed classifies as a failure. With that said, most of those failures are replaced with engineered systems. They're the old standard systems that were designed for a home that was used maybe on the 4th of July and Labor Day and Memorial Day and that kind of thing. They were cabins in some instances. Today we have people that are living there full time. Those systems aren't able to actually recover in a timely manner. And so I just wanted to reiterate that to the board, let you know that we are looking at some of those issues right now. We'll be addressing some of those issues as well in the proposed change in the code. One of the major issues that I'm talking to the consultants about right now is something that the board brought up, and that is system maintenance. Okay, we'll get the information out there. How do you maintain your system? But do we put something in the code, which is very difficult? It's easy to put in the code. It's a very difficult item to actually implement in the field. How do we make sure people are maintaining their systems? And that's going to take care of a lot of the, right out of the gate, if you will, a lot of the potential problems that we can have with existing septic systems. And then finally, looking at that chart, my comment to that would be something that may or may not have been said, and that is, of course, as you notice from June, July, August, September, what's happening with the weather that time of year. Well, it's hot, it's dry, our water bodies are running slower and slower and slower. What happens scientifically from a fecal coliform or other pathogenic organism standpoint, as the water warms up, it's a better environment for those things to do well in. As it slows down, again, a better environment for those pathogens to do well in. So you would almost expect, or I would almost expect to see that in a surface water supply, especially if it's a river and it's dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping. With that said, that's all I have. Any questions for environmental health or on-site sewage? Thank you.
All right. I think we've heard just about everything we need to know about this topic. I want to encourage the staff present and those listening in to take this issue seriously. The board is interested in getting the rest of the county up on this, and we need the funds to do so. We have the partners, we have the will. We hope you will find the way.
I think you need to come back with a proposed implementation sort of measure, how it would work, what it would cost if the county did it alone, what it would cost if we came up with partners, who those partners might be, including CCWD and the independent sewer and water districts, et cetera, and see if we can have some kind of a basic proposal that comes back to us.
Yes, I would agree with that. I think that's consensus.
Okay, we need a break.
Thank you. We will take a 5-minute break and then move into closed session number, I believe the sheriff is kicking this one off.
What we'd really like to accomplish today is two things. One, get all your questions answered, hopefully, concerning the process we're going into, which would be the grant application. The one thing I'd like to just thing to very quickly highlight is on March 4th, we're slated to bring a resolution before you. And there are certain things in that resolution the state will require that the board pass before grant funding will be available. We may actually, because the meeting that the Correction Standards Authority is holding, we may actually try to push that out to March 11th, but that will be an absolute drop dead date because our application has to be in for March 18th. And so just very quickly, I want to hit on the items in this resolution and any questions you have about them we want to answer. But after I just kind of briefly hit on these issues, I'd like to turn it over to Harry Runyon of TRG Consulting. Harry's been working with us for years on putting this whole scale concept together. And he does a tremendous amount of work through CSA and has been through this process many times. And he's probably the person to answer a lot of the questions here. But when we bring this resolution in front of you, hopefully on March 4th, it'll have to indicate that, well, it'll appoint me as the person authorized to sign the grant application, County Administrative Officer Robert Lawton as County Construction Manager, Linda Churches, Auditor Controller as Project Financial Officer, and Captain Eddie Ballard as the Sheriff's Department contact person. It will authorize me to sign the grant application for grant funding for purposes of constructing a new jail. Now, this resolution we're handing out, we left that blank, the number of beds. What's happened in all the prior processes the state had, you were required to plan at least 20 years out. In this process, the state changed it. You cannot plan past 2011. So the 240-bed figure was planning for 20 years out. Planning for 2011, it brings us to 160 beds. But we still plan on building a 240-bed facility, and Harry will get that explained. I think you're going to be very pleased with the numbers he's going to put out here. Resolution will have to assure the county will adhere to state requirements and the terms and agreements between the county and the state. Assure the county has appropriated, will appropriate after conditional project award, there'll be 4 state-county funding agreements, the amount of match that the county will require. We have that taken care. It'll assure that the county will fully and safely staff and operate the new adult detention facility that is being constructed in accordance with Title 15 California Code of Regulations within 90 days project completion. We do have the numbers on staffing. I've privately talked to some of you and given you my estimates on staffing, and quite frankly, I wasn't very close. But Harry has what we believe are accurate numbers and accurate dollars amount for funding this position. Here's the county has a project site and or control, and it's going to be longer together for library property and the new property. One reason we're pushing it as far as we can is hopefully there will be some kind of commitment on the landowner's part. We have to convince the state that we have control of the property. It has to the amount the county values the property. We do have a fund for that. It assures that the county has agreed to work with CDCR on the reentry facility. We're covered on that very well. and it has to assure if the county agrees to assist the state in citing administrative treatment and crisis care for parolees and for providing continuing care for mental health and substance abuse treatment so that parolees can receive those services. We're in good shape with that. I mean, we're not expecting to give them a higher level that they are. We are expecting to give them the same level of service that is available to any citizen. And those are the things that are going to have to be in the resolution. Like I say, we will either be bringing that to you on the 4th of March or the 11th of March. And we would really like to get as many questions answered today as we can. Now, Terry will be going to some meetings with CSA. Some of these things may get tweaked around, so it's hard for us to put absolute 100% numbers in some of these things until those meetings are concluded. And it may push us so close to the 4th that we may not be able to get it for you. But what we have here now is very, very close.
So we want it on the agenda for the 4th, and if we have to move it out 1 week, we can do that.
If we do have to move it out, we will absolutely let you know what we have to tweak if we have to tweak it. And with having said that, I would like to encourage you, I would like to leave this meeting today with every question you got answered. If we can, I really, we're getting, our time frames are really starting to get tight, and anything we can answer for you, please don't hesitate to ask. With that, I'll leave it to you.
Thank you, Sheriff. What I'd like to do is take you through this handout that I believe was sitting up on your desk there when you came in. Take you briefly through and show you what we're doing, where we've been, and what we've found so far. The first part is a needs assessment. Title 24 requires a needs assessment within 2 years anytime you're going to construct anything or add a major portion to the jail. So we have to look at your existing jail, which everybody's very familiar with, the conditions. Table 1 simply shows you what your rated beds are. That is what CSA will allow you to hold based on Title 24. And as you know, you have 65 total beds. 5 of them are in single cells, 10 of them are in double cells, and most of them are in dormitories. The problem with that, of course, is you're holding felons that need housing that's not dormitory. They need single or double cell, primarily double cell because it's more cost efficient. And you know your jail's been under a voluntary court order since 1992. So the need in beds has been there for a long time. If you turn to Table 2 on the second page, you'll see what the needs are. And the way these are determined is a series of formulas that were developed by LEAA that have been tested in court, and we use Department of Finance numbers. That's what CSA wants us to use so they compare apples to apples across the board when they compare to other counties. What this shows you is the raw detention bed needs. By raw, I mean these numbers get adjusted for staffing efficiencies and construction efficiencies based on Title 24 requirements. In other words, you've got requirements like 1 shower for 10 inmates and so on. So you try to keep those things in mind. The identified need for the facility type, if you turn the page, you'll see Table 3. And what the sheriff and his command staff have elected to do is, instead of building any single cells, build all double cells for that need. The reason for this is a single cell has to be 70 square feet and a double cell has to be 70 square feet by Title 24. Therefore, it's far more cost efficient because you're just adding a bunk to build double cells. It doesn't mean that occasionally he won't use some of them as single cells, but he gets far more capacity for far less money, so it's much more cost effective to build that way. That's why you see right now, and this is subject to change, that 120 beds will be in double cell, and 120 would be in dormitory. It may change to a higher number in double cell. We're looking at those numbers right now. And then it goes on to describe what the double occupancy cells and dormitories are. Now, we did an architectural program several months back. It's a very detailed architectural program that goes space by space, identifies every physical space in the new adult detention facility and what goes in there. The sheriff has had an executive steering committee that's been working on this since early last year, and it's been a very participatory process. One of the great things about working in this county is people do participate, and it makes the job a lot easier, but it also makes this facility yours, and because you're the people that are going to have to operate it once it's constructed. Conceptual design is in progress now, and if you turn to page 4, you'll see what a double-celled housing unit looks like. The top floor plan is the floor level or ground level, and then the figure 2 is the tier level above it. We're also looking at one that seems to be a little more cost efficient, that'll, instead of having 3 housing pods, you see there are 3 housing pods in this housing unit. We're looking at one that will have 4 housing pods in a unit, will pull the support spaces more to the side. So that's in progress right now. If you turn to the next page, page 5, you can see what a dormitory unit looks like. You'll see they're very, very similar. They're similar for one primary reason. You want to be able to train officers so they can work in these facilities without having to remember which particular housing pod they're in or which type pod. This is particularly important if you lose power, if you have a fire or something like that. So there's reason that they look the way they do. And as I said, the sheriff has this pretty terrific executive steering committee, and they not only meet with the design team, but they meet individually and work out how they're operating these things. So they've had total say in how this ends up being put together. Our job is to bring them a lot of options and opportunities to look at. If you turn the page, you'll see the intake suite as it stands right now. The design you see there is being modified, will be modified by the end of the week to reflect the last meeting we had to discuss it. But essentially you have an intake corridor and a release corridor, holding cells and all the support things you need for intake, processing, and release. If you turn to the next page, we were asked, we're looking at 2 sites. The primary site we're looking at is a county-owned government center site, but we're also looking at a site that you're considering purchasing up above the government center. What you see is a master site plan for that site. We're still waiting for a survey on the lower piece so we can do that. But this is a conceptual idea of how it'll lay out. You'll notice it's connected to the courthouse. That's a big operational issue because it saves the sheriff and the county a whole lot of operational funds if he doesn't have to put inmates in vehicles and transport them to move them to the jail, to the court. It also cuts down on contraband and improves security enormously. So our goal is to connect to the courts. And you'll also see that it shows the sheriff's admin building down in the lower piece. The next issue is the AB 900. As you all know, it's an opportunity that comes along in this state, it seems, every 2 decades. The last one we had was in the early 90s. The bad news, of course, is you need a lot of beds. Like most counties, you haven't kept up with the bed need over the years. Once you catch up, though, it gets fairly easy to stay with the bed need. That's the bad news. The good news is that there's state money out there now to help you do that. For small counties, there's $100 million of the $750 million of AB 900 that's a set-aside, essentially. It will all go to small counties. Each small county can be awarded a grant up to $30 million, which is well within, we're well within that limit. The evaluation factors are critical, and they're all listed in Table 4. It's not real rocket science. The way you write these grants is you simply maximize every possible point you can. There are some things that have small point totals, like number 7, cash match, 25 points. That's for excess cash match. But we've seen these things won by the difference of 4 or 5 points. So we try to maximize every particular category. Where you have a terrific advantage is in number 8, which is the re-entry beds. You have a letter now from CDCR giving you those 300 points. And there are a lot of counties, particularly small counties, struggling with how they're going to handle that re-entry bed thing. And there'll be a lot of them that don't get the 350. What you get is you get 0, 150, or 350, depending on how well you're playing with the state. We're playing very well, so we're at 300 points. The other thing is project need, number 1, is highlighted. Your need is enormous, from asbestos to mazes that I can't imagine how a correctional officer would be able to get people out of there in a fire. It's just the need is very apparent and it's very easy to illustrate. Those are the two highest scoring categories. So this opportunity is sitting there, but you're in very, very good shape to take advantage of it. So the goal is to get the most of the 1,325 points. If you turn to the next page, you see Table 5 has got the milestone summary. A lot of that's already gone by. The grant proposals are due on March 18th, which unfortunately is a Tuesday, which means that, as the sheriff said, our drop dead date for your approval of the resolution will be March 11th. We hope to have it to you on March 4th, so that's out of the way. Now, what happens just before March 4th, as the sheriff alluded to, is we'll go to the CSA staff for what's called a technical review. That means we'll put the grant proposal in front of them, they'll go through it and see that we've met all of the technical requirements. And if we've missed anything, which we haven't in a while, they'll come back and tell us. But it's always good to have that check. Sometimes we may pick up a little intelligence along the way, who knows. But anyway, that has to be done, and we push it to as close. March 4th is the last day they'll do it. We're not going to do it on March 4th. We'll do it a couple days before that. We do that for a couple of reasons. One is we want them to have seen a lot of other grant applications, so that if there's anything that's going to stick out, they're going to catch it in ours. And the other thing is we want to be able to adjust based on what we know at that point, up to almost the last minute. Once the applications are submitted, then the next thing that happens is you have to appear before the Executive Steering Committee in April 23rd and 24th, or when they schedule those. It's usually a 10 to 15 minute limited presentation. It gives you your chance to go in front of the Executive Steering Committee that makes the grant awards and make your case. And you'll be allowed to use boards if they do it as they have in the past. You won't be allowed to use PowerPoint or anything like that. Their theory is they want you to be able to walk in with your boards, make your presentation, turn around and get out. And they hold you to the 10 or 15 minutes because they're trying to move as many counties through as they can. We'll prepare those boards and everything, have plenty of time to rehearse. Typically, the sheriff is the one leading the presentation. However, it's always good to have at least one member of the Board of Supervisors there to show the support of the board. And we've had times that we've had 15 or 16 people there. They don't all talk, but they do show support. So we'll talk about that as we get closer. And then May 8th is the magic day when we find out whether we've been awarded the grant or not. The next thing we have to present is a handout that the undersheriff will give you right now. This is what the sheriff alluded to. It's probable cost. Now, a couple of caveats about the probable cost. We are still designing. We're still doing the conceptual design. So the construction cost will be adjusted a bit. We're pretty close to where we think we need to be. But as we actually lay the spacing out, we get actual square footage instead of programmed square footage. So there will be some improvement in the accuracy of the probable cost for the estimates. Table 1 shows you what we're going to request. Well, first of all, the project cost for the ADS, the jail piece, $24,900 roughly. The grant request, we can request 75% of that from the state, or $18,675,000. Then we have the cash match of 5% and the in-kind match of 20%. What we're proposing is, as the sheriff mentioned, that we build, instead of the 160 beds, remember, we can only request funds for 160 beds because that's what our needs assessment shows. We build 240 beds. To get to the 240 beds, right now we're looking at adding 80 dormitory beds. Dormitory beds because they're the least expensive to build, and they're going to be built on the county's dollar. And it's going to do several things for us if you remember that table that showed the point scores. It'll help us in, obviously, in cash match. It'll also help us in cost efficiency, which is a rated factor, and it'll help us in net gain in beds. So at least 3 areas will be impacted by adding those dormitory beds. Now, if you look at Table 2, it gives you the county's obligations. The cash, hard cash match, is 5% at $1,245,000. There is no relief from that. Every small county has to provide that cash match in full. If you decide to, and it doesn't look like there would be any reason to, you could petition to have the in-kind match reduced. And that 20% match is sitting at just under $5 million. The cost for the 60 additional beds is $2,234,000, for a total of $8,459,000. Now, the in-kind match is not necessarily directly cash out of the county's pocket, because some of those things are county salaries and so on that you're going to pay anyway. Then finally, we have the probable staffing cost. This is the staff that will be required, increased staff that will be required for the new jail. And that, as you can see, is 3 correctional sergeants, 13 correctional officers, and 5 sheriff's services techs. Remember, you're going from a 65-bed jail to 240 beds. And so that shows you what the increase in staffing needs to be. And the total cost there, of course, is $1,104,613. So with that, I think we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Dennis?
Questions? Oh, excuse me. Go ahead.
Who's going?
Go ahead. You.
On your annual probable staffing cost, you show $1,104,613. What is the annual cost for staffing the current jail, like in this current budget year?
Just staff costs is just a little over $1 million.
Okay, so in other words, you believe the staffing costs will remain constant?
So we have, no, this is additional. We have.
This is additional to the current staffing costs?
Yeah, doubles. We have right now 14 correctional officers. That's
Oh, wait a minute.
sergeants and 12 COs. We have 1 sheriff's tech. As we needed to hire additional people, we were going to try to hire sheriff's techs because they're cheaper to work behind the glass. We want to move our correctional officers into the facility. They don't need to be doing all the clerical work and everything we're doing now. So, but yeah, it's going to just about double the staff. Is what it's going to do.
Okay, well, this is annual probable staffing cost for 240 beds. $1 million?
That's
incorrect.
This is additional cost.
That's additional cost.
Any idea where that's going to come from?
No, I mean, we're working with a developer on a project, and one of the things that they agreed to is to hire us another correctional officer. But we're not going to be able to pick up that many. I mean, we will certainly do what we can to find funding for those positions, but that's just a county cost, and I don't know how to get around it. If we're going to operate the facility, we've got to staff.
What would be the estimated completion date of the new jail?
We're looking at, January 2011?
Yes.
So that's when we'd have to pick up this additional staffing.
Well, we would probably at least a year out start. I mean, it takes us 6 months to get somebody on board, so at least a year out we would have to start hiring to get them trained. I mean, because we have a transition that we have to make that needs to be seamless, and for a very short period of time, you're actually operating both facilities and things that everybody will do. So everybody has to be trained and on board by the time the doors open.
Dennis, I'm sorry, Tom. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
If we build a 240, though, wouldn't we be phasing that in terms of occupancy?
I'm glad you asked that. The design that Harry is working on now, it'll make it a lot more efficient for staff. If we put the state-built 160 beds in one pod, then the 80 beds that we build in the next pod, those will be county beds, and we can determine when they need to be opened and staffed. So we have time. I mean, eventually we're going to have to open those. We're going to need them. But if we build, we cannot keep from opening the state beds. We have to use them. But if we build the pods in that fashion, then we cut our staffing costs initially down. So it's a transition to later on.
Dennis, if I may just interrupt for a minute. There are a lot of counties that are short jail beds. Can't we basically open those up and charge those counties and help offset the cost of operating a new jail?
I've talked to sheriffs, and conceptually, we're in agreement that they would like to have police space available, because there's absolutely none around here right now.
Right.
We believe that we can lease beds, make money off those lease beds and help with the staffing costs, and that's primarily what it would be, is to pay for staffing costs. Lassen County leases half their jail to the state, and it virtually pays everything. I don't know that we want to do that, but certainly if we can lease beds to pay for the staffing costs, the operational costs, we sure as heck don't take advantage.
Sorry, Maria.
But those are prisoners. Those aren't
Well, the
inmates.
state people not. There's a lot of leases. There's a lot of leases out there. I mean, some people are leased to the federal government, some leased to the state, some leased to neighboring counties. It's kind of a concept we've been looking at forever, to lease beds to pay for the operational costs, but it's nothing we really dove into. But we knew, actually Mike asked if I wanted you to bring a little box of paddles, so when we told him what the operational staffing costs were going to be. but we knew this was coming. I quite frankly did not anticipate that we would need as many people as it's determined we do. But we are not being overboard on this by any stretch of the imagination. I think we will just need a minimum city.
Getting back to that point, right now we have, you say, 2 sergeants and 12 correctional officers. If we had the space to deal with what we are now dealing with, rather than releasing early and having that kind of recycling program that we've got, how many would we actually have now, just given current volumes?
Oh, if we had the space to house the people that should be in our jail?
Yes.
Oh, we would have at least this many or more. And if we had that same design, it'd be a whole lot more. This jail is very work intensive as far as the numbers of staff that you have to have, because you have to physically walk in and look at stuff. With this, at least you have one person in control room that can look at it.
So this design is a lot more efficient, and the numbers that you've come up with here, is there like a standard there, Dennis, or I'm assuming that your numbers are accurate. I just don't know how you get to that. Is there a state standard for how many correctional officers per beds or anything of that nature?
The state will only tell you if you're out of compliance for safety, but they don't tell you exactly how many people you have to have. What we did, Bill, is we looked at this thing and we looked at 2 pods. You need a person in the control room. You need 2 people on the floor. And so you basically have 3 people managing 120 people. And then you need 2 people in your booking area. And if you use a factor of 5 to do a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week thing, this is what it comes out to.
Had another question. In the current arrangement, you've got 5 cells that are single person cells and none in the new configuration. I'm wondering if there's any use for singles, and would you plan to use that in the doubles when there was somebody you needed to isolate? And is there any savings if we were to have at least a couple set aside for that?
No, I think what it is we have certain, all the time we have somebody we have to house alone, right. But we can house them alone in a double cell. Right. And then when he's out of there and somebody better is there, then we have another box that we can use. Right. So it's just we're using the single cells as needed.
All right. Other questions?
Yeah, I have a question on the evaluation factor. On the net gain in beds, is this 240 minus the 6? Is this
minus 65?
Minus the 65.
Correct.
So how do they determine that? I mean, what difference is it than, 95 or...
Well, because what happens is, as the numbers get higher, you get a better net gain, number one, and number two, you're dividing that number into the cost you're asking for cost effectiveness. So you get a better number than you would if you did 160 beds, you get a lesser score than doing 240.
Now, we lost out last time because we needed a whole facility versus additional beds.
Correct.
That doesn't play into it this time.
Last time you didn't have 300 points for re-entry, and the need, as I recall, was 200 in those days. So you're scoring better this time than you did last time, by far. And you're also in the, I'm trying to remember the previous one, we didn't ask for 240 beds. We asked for 99, I think it was, yeah. So it wasn't.
But we're looking for a whole new facility this time. We lost out because other facilities were just doing bed increase.
However, most of the small counties are looking at full facilities. They're not looking at. There is one that is looking at additional beds. But I don't know that they got the 300 points.
Marie, we got this time around. We're competing with kind of outfits that are pretty much in as bad a shape as we are on some level. Well, what killed us before were the San Joaquin counties and those that we just put in a big dormitory, and so their cost per bed was much cheaper than ours. But I think pretty much this time around that we're going to be competing with.
So cost of bed's not going to be an issue then. Because our cost per bed's going to be higher than if you just needed a bed.
Putting in dorms and that's all, no support. But as the sheriff says, you look at Amador, Tuolumne, they're both looking at full facility, as are several other small counties.
How are we competitively with Amador?
We're competitive. Put me in an awkward position.
Yeah, I do. Well, I mean, Tuolumne's priority was a juvenile facility. So I'm assuming they're not competition, but I didn't.
No, they are competition. They're going.
Russ, or Marita, are you complete?
Yeah.
Russ?
I see that you have this sighting presentation here showing going up above the Public Works area. But do you have a similar sighting scenario for staying on campus?
We will as soon as we get the site survey. We don't have a site survey for down here.
Bill?
So for these, back to table 4, the evaluation factors, I'm curious to know, regardless of the number or size of facilities that are being included in this competition, are these the maximum points in those categories, or is that relative to the size of your request?
Those categories hold whether you're a large, medium, or small county. So those categories and the points. So there's no difference. So everybody competing has the same scale.
And how is that evaluated?
The Executive Steering Committee sits down there. There are some guidelines in the grant application itself to tell you how certain ones will be evaluated and calculated, but the Executive Steering Committee awarding the grants has a lot of leeway. For example, one of the things they'll do is when they get these proposals back at their office, some are sheriffs, some are members of boards of supervisors and so on. They get a whole package of all these grant applications and they go through them. Then they meet as an executive steering committee, and usually the first thing they do is they'll call in the field rep that represents that county from the CSA staff. They'll sit down and talk with the field rep about what they know about the county, what they've seen, and that sort of thing. And then they'll talk among themselves. Now, some of these will be calculated strictly mathematically. Net gain in beds is a mathematical calculation, subtract what you're demolishing from what you're gaining. And then those are all listed, like there are 31 small counties, so they'll list it from the largest net gain in beds to the lowest net gain in beds. And And then the steering committee will decide. They may break them into groups of 5 and say, well, these get 50 points, these get 75 points, so on. They could do it that way, or they could break them down. They have 2 statisticians that are with them, with doctors and statistics, and they can help them look at it in all kinds of different ways, and the executive steering committee kind of decides how they want to do it. Now, project need, there is no scale. Project need is what we can convince them. We got some great pictures.
That's just an argument.
Yeah, well, and the reality is,
Can't lose that.
I was in Ron Darrell's office when he was the sheriff. He got his packages for the executive steering committee. He had 8 banker's boxes full of stuff. Now, he's a sitting sheriff, so he's got other things to worry about, too. Well, he had 2 or 3 weeks to review all this. Well, he did. I mean, he's one of these people that will go through every page and every document. But there are some people that aren't going to. So part of the key to the whole process is you want things that jump out, pictures jump out, graphics jump out. And you want to make damn sure your narrative, which is your abstract, your one-page summary, is concise and tells them exactly why they should give you the grant. Because some of these people don't read everything, but they will read that.
Sure. Okay.
And then you look at other things. Administrative work plan, that's fairly straightforward. CSA has a process they want you to go through when you're designing a jail in the state. So it's a matter of repeating that and making sure you have the state public works board. Cost effectiveness, it's a simple calculation. They'll take the net gain in beds and divide that into what you're asking for in dollars, and you'll come out all right on that, even with a...
Yeah, that's what Marita was alluding to with...
Yeah. Correct. And as I say, the 300, the biggest category you already have. Preference points for assisting the state in the mental health area, I think you'll do all right. There's not... It was one of these things where we were told by CDCR as late as the bidders conference that there would be state money available. All you had to do is indicate a willingness to do these things, provided the state money was coming. Well, the webinar that was held 2 weeks ago, the Secretary Tilton and the rest of the CDCR staff changed all that. Anything there likely to be no state money available, and the county's on the hook for it. Well, some of it you'd be on the hook for anyway, because if the parolee is an assistant, is a citizen of your county, he's probably coming back to your county, or she's coming back. And so whatever mental health service is available would be available for that person. Mm-hmm. So that's why your resolution is worded the way it is. It's worded that what is available to a citizen of the county will be available to ex-offenders and parolees. That's fair. But it doesn't require you to spend a whole bunch of money for these 2 populations if you're not spending it for your other citizens. So.
Okay. Thanks, Harry.
Following up on the mental health side of things, I know there's been a lot of discussion about what a burden has been placed on law enforcement dealing with the mental health population. Does that have any implications for designing these facilities? I'm not sure what our prospects are in terms of changing policy, at least state or federal policy in the near future. If we're dealing with a large segment of population with mental health needs, is there construction design that is appropriate or to either segregate or serve that particular community?
Yes, there's several things. First of all, you're familiar with this jail. You know the sheriff has exactly 1 program room that doubles as storage and 3 or 4 other things. So the first thing is every housing pod's got program rooms near it. So there are adequate program space. There's adequate interview space. There's all kinds of counseling space available. Additionally, you're going to have extra beds. I mean, not extra beds, but you're going to have beds that are adequate for your county. Right now, some of these programs that the sheriff would love to run, he can try to run, but he has no hammer at the end of it. In other words, you fail a program, you're going back to jail because there's no jail bed. So none of that is happening. But particularly on the mental health side, there'll be plenty of space for treatment. There'll be plenty of space, plenty of opportunity for separation, segregation of certain types of mental health inmates. So yes, it'll be a bigger. Also, it's not going to be this onerous place at your jail. It's going to. Years ago, CDCR hired a firm I worked for to look at exactly what a person experiences when they go to jail. And so we had psychologists and psychiatrists, and they wanted to know what design issues could be addressed to try and make it an environment where not only was it a more professional environment for officers, but it was more conducive to change and program success. And a lot of things came out of that, but it has to do with color, it has to do with light, it has to do with acoustics, and all those will be used in this new design.
Okay, I can assume that we won't replicate the small room with a hole in the cement floor, and that's
yes, you will, actually. You're required to by Title 24. That's what's referred to as a safety cell, where somebody that is...
Yes.
So you will replicate that. You'll replicate it twice because you have to now.
Aren't there somewhat modern materials that can be installed in those to be... Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. All right.
But you are required to have those rooms where there's just simply can't hurt yourself.
Right. All right, thank you.
But the mental health component to it is jails have become mental health holding facilities.
Yeah, unbelievable.
And jail is not an appropriate place for many of those people. On the upper end, the reentry facility we're hoping will deal with some of that. At least they'll be evaluated and people will work with them in the reentry part of it before they're released the last 6 months to a year. And hopefully, if that person can get put in a condition, then the continuum of care will continue when they get here. Maybe they'll stay on. Right now, whether you've got mental health problems or not, it's $200 on a bus ticket. And you got no chance to succeed whatsoever. That's why we've got a 70% recidivism rate right now. And if the state actually comes through with what we're hoping that they accomplish at those reentry facilities, it will make everybody's life easier all the way through the system. But, we have a mental health outfit that will evaluate somebody, get them on the right meds. It's really hard to keep track of them and keep them on those meds and that sort of stuff. And then when something happens, jail's the only alternative.
Hopefully we'll evolve someday towards something better, but meanwhile, it'd be good to have a good design. Any other questions, comments?
Was that a bus ticket on Calaveras Transit?
That'll get you into Amador if we're lucky.
There is one thing, if you look at the cost outline, Table 2, that talks about the county's match for construction. If you look at the in-kind match versus the cash match, and you realize that the voters authorized $10 million for a cash match, you realize that not all that money is being spent here. So that is something that the voters will be able to take advantage of. It does not look at this time like all of the money is going to be needed.
All right, that would be pleasant. Are there comments from the public? Any other person present wish to weigh in on the subject? Dennis, would you like to summarize?
If I could say one more thing.
Of course.
We will be bringing the resolution to you. We need all the things in the resolution for a grant application. I think everybody on this board knew that with a bigger facility, it's going to mean a bigger spend. I talked to Mr. Lawton here a couple of weeks ago, and I told him that we would probably need 6 or 8 additional. I guess there's already a little I know that's a big number. I don't know what you have to do about it except to make a commitment to you. And any opportunity you can find to assist the county and staff in that, we'll do it.
I guess in complete desperation with the kitchen you've got over there, we can always hold a lot of bake sales. Thanks. Thank you, everybody. This will conclude this particular study session. We will have a 3-minute... Yes. Actually...